Good morning from, it's actually good evening here, or good afternoon from Sabeel, from Jerusalem. It's a pleasure to be with you again in another online Kumi session. We hope everyone is doing well. In Palestine, Israel, we're in the middle of a 6th corona wave. Yesterday, there were over 10,000 cases recorded in the country. In Israel alone, with 2,000 in Palestine alone, and people expect that the numbers are much higher. So my name is, I hope things are safer or better wherever you are. My name is Omar Harami, and I want to thank you again for joining us for the latest Kumi Now online gathering. This week, we will focus on the issue facing Palestinian refugees in the refugee camps and around the world, as well as those internally displaced inside Israel. 2/3 of the Palestinian people are refugees, and we are all somehow either have a refugee heritage from one part of our parents or both, depending on where we are. Today we are lucky and blessed to be joined by Sandra Khoury, the president of Sabeel board in Jerusalem. Before we start, I'd like to remind you that this session is being broadcasted live on Facebook. If you do not wish to appear, please turn off your video feed. We would also love it if you could quickly share one of the links that are being shared in the chat so that others may join. It's a pleasure to be with you, Sandra Khoury, and we would like you to introduce yourself, as it has been the tradition at Sabeel, and kindly share with us your story and the story of your family.
Thank you, Omar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Sandra Khoury, and I'm a Jerusalemite. We traced our family history in Jerusalem till the 1760s. We couldn't go back further because the archives were burnt by the Ottomans in Jerusalem, and the main archives at that time were held in Bethlehem. So I'm a Jerusalemite through and through. I'm new to Sabeel, and I'm, as Omar mentioned, the president of the board. It is a privilege for me to serve. I hope we will have a good session today. When I was first approached to reflect upon the topic of being a descendant of refugees, a rush of emotions clouded not only my vision, but also my mind. Too many thoughts, stories, a lot of despair, and some hope washed over me. I wondered, what more can I say or add that actually could make a difference or a change for the better? I will not talk about numbers or UN resolutions that guarantee our right of return, nor about the refugee camps and daily sufferings. Today, I am one among millions of refugees, some living in refugee camps, others like me internally displaced in my own city, while others have forged a life for themselves in countries that are far and near. Today, we are a burden on donor agencies such as UNRWA. Today, we are a burden to our host countries and governments. Often, we find ourselves caught in the middle of conflict in our host countries, while at times we become part of that conflict itself. The complexities are too many, so much so that the world forgot that we are not players in a political agenda or game, but real people with a real story to tell. Mine spans for 4 generations. Both my parents were born in up-and-coming neighborhood of Talbiyah in West Jerusalem today, when Palestine was under the rule of the British Mandate. They both grew up in a happy household, content with what they have, and continue to accomplish through hard work. My mother, Claudette Ayoub, attended a nursery at a very close by convent of Sant Antonio, while my late father, Isa Habash, with his cousins, attended Collège de Frères in the old city of Jerusalem. My paternal grandfather expanded his printing business to a newly built premises in Mamilla, the business district of Jerusalem at that time, while my maternal grandfather continued expanding his trading business. While they were aware of the rising tensions, political unrest, turmoil under the British mandate, in addition to the war in Europe, they never foresaw or anticipated the war of 1948 and their dispossession. In an article written by my mother, Claudette, and published in This Week in Palestine, she says, "At that time, I was too young to understand the calamities that were hiding just around the corner. I could not explain the silent glances between my father and mother. The war, the dispossession, the loss, the ensuing events came too fast, but the trauma lingered. While my grandmothers, my parents and their siblings took refuge in the church and later in Jericho, my grandfathers were at a loss trying to provide for their families with dignity. Very soon, they found out that they are unable to return to their homes, to their livelihoods. My mother, who was 7 at that time, wrote, and I quote, "I wanted my only doll, which was left behind in Talbiyah. I could not comprehend why my father, my rock, the symbol of strength and power, who never denied me anything, could not grant me a simple wish." She continues, "Through shattered lives and shattered dreams, I will always wonder who hugged my doll and slept in the comfort of my own bed." The loss was not only a material loss, it was the loss of a way of life and traditions. It was the loss of one's community with shared interests and upon which families depended on for support and social and economic growth. What continuously amazed me is how both my parents remember the smallest of happy details. My mother vividly remembers going to the nearby hill with her grandmother to pick the wild spring flowers to color the Easter eggs. She vividly remembers her afternoon snacks around the fountain in her garden. She joyously talked about the gathering of friends and family around that same fountain and the delicacies her mother prepared. And she loved picking and eating the fruits of the mulberry tree in my father's garden. My father, a rather mischievous son, used to tell me about his escapades with his cousins and their bicycles, their most prized possession at that time. He taught me the value of family and how to him it was the most important structure while growing up, never leaving anyone in need. He, as well as my mother, shared stories of friendship with their Jewish neighbors and tenants who, after 1948, claimed ownership of my parents' property. Both my parents never shared with me the pain and the sacrifices that their parents, as well as thousands of Palestinians, endured to rebuild a semblance of a normal life. I always imagined both grandparents in the privacy of their own room, facing their fears, their sadness, and their tears. I mentioned earlier the mulberry tree in my father's garden, and I would like to share the story with you. When my father was born in 1932, my grandfather, in a gesture of thanksgiving, planted this tree. Often in my childhood, my father took us in late May to eat from its fruits, as if telling us to keep hope and one day justice will prevail. I continued that traditions with my children, who I assure you will honor that custom with their children. As my mother puts it, The tree became a symbol to the family and a living hope of return, as that tree continues to bear in abundance. My father passed away in February of last year, and I only saw fit to start his final journey from his home in Talbiya to honor his legacy, as well as of thousands of Palestinians who could never set foot back in their homeland. To bid him a final farewell, 3 generations of my family tied a big black ribbon around the 88-year-old mulberry tree. On his birthday last year, the family gathered around the tree to lay flowers, only to find it chopped. My mother did not cry because she was suffocating with emotions, but she asked, was I missing Isa, her husband, my father, or was I mourning the loss of a homeland? This year, just 2 days ago, we went back on our annual pilgrimage, only to find a resilient tree with new offshoots. We rebuilt our lives through sweat and tears, cherishing our collective memory and passing the torch to our children and grandchildren. We built new houses and successful businesses. We serve our community, our church, and our country. But both parents insist that these new structures are houses that they live in, but their homes will forever be in Talbiya. It is not our inability to move forward beyond the war of 1948 and how it shaped our future. It is not the inability of reconciliation or working and advocating for peace, because we do. It remains a matter of an unresolved injustice. We paid a heavy price and we continue to do so today. Just recently, a diplomat said to me that my narrative is too emotional and I am too sensitive, and suggested that I rethink that narrative. But as long as injustice prevails, my narrative, my story, and the story of Palestine will stay the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Who is the diplomat? Or a diplomat? Which country?
I have to be a diplomatic person in answering.
At least the country we cannot find.
German. Yes.
I mean, it is. I remember in 2008, many artists were doing many celebrations because it was commemorating 70 years of Nakba. And at 60 years and 50 years of Nakba, each year, you know, it's major celebrations. But I remember in 2008, because this is where my memory is, we went into this into this gallery room, and it was people. There was a program in the country sharing all of the people's stories, and the stories were hanging from the wall, from the ceiling, and you go into, and it felt like you're into a cloud or into in the middle of a cloud of thousands of stories that were shared per people from people. And in a way, it's what made me feel upset the most from that time, because we are also refugees and we all have our stories. That it was the first time I felt this at Nakba. I felt tired from reading the story, from the stories, because there were like maybe in the thousands of the stories. Do you feel sometimes tired from saying the story to people?
No, because I think it is my duty. It's not because I want to retell the story, because it is our duty to work towards justice and peace. If I don't tell the story, there will never be peace. There will never be true understanding of what the Palestinians have suffered and continue to suffer today. It is a legacy. It is our responsibility as Palestinians. It is our collective memory, as I said. If people get tired of listening to our story, we will find new ears that are supportive. And I know that our friends are are numerous and are willing to assist us and stand by us in our advocacy work and in the work of what we're supposed to do.
There's a question, are there books that capture the Nakba that I can read? What a powerful story. Thank you, Ms. Khoury.
There's, I think it is in English, Lest We Forget by Khaldi, and it is published by مؤسسة الدراسات العربية, the one in Lebanon. How do you translate it? The Institute of Palestinian Studies. If you go to their website, they have an excellent array of books that discuss the Nakba and the effects of it, even 74 years down the line.
And I would also recommend, there is also a very good book that I think it's the mostly read book. If you haven't read it, it's worth reading. It's called Blood Brothers by, actually by Father Ilyas Shakur, Bishop Ilyas Shakur. He's also one of the co-founders of Sabeel, and I think it is one of the most sold books that speaks about Nakba. There's thousands of stories and books to be shared. I want to ask you, the whole family is extremely dedicated, especially the younger generation. I know Subhi and Rajai, they're active, they're passionate, and they're very much determined. It's maybe stronger than other generations. Do you think Israel made a bet, or the Zionists made a bet, that it is the younger generations will forget and the older generations would die? Do you think that this is happening in Palestine? Is your family unique, or this is the general narrative?
No, we are absolutely not unique. The younger generation, at least my children, grew up under Oslo with the hope of a state of Palestine with secure borders, implementation of UN resolutions. Many, when we talk about the right of return, many have absolutely nowhere to return. For example, take my husband, who comes from a family from a village up in next to Nazareth called Mjedel. My husband's family is an Orthodox family, and by tradition, they used to work in the land. And when their children were old enough, they went and became priests in the Orthodox Church. And actually, the church of that village was built by the great-grandfather of my husband. And this is what remains with the Catholic Church. This is the only two things that remain in that village. So where would they go? And it is heavily populated by the new, the Israelis now, the Israelis. So when we talk about the right of the return, it is the right to exercise that return. And if my village or my home has been razed to the ground, I have the right to repatriation. It is not a new word. The Jews, and rightfully so, were repatriated for their loss in Europe. And we have the same right. And if you ask me, Omar, would I go back and live in my home as my parents would like to call it, and not in a house? Yes. And I absolutely have no problems living with Jews or among them, because before 1948, the friends of my parents were also Jews. They did not meet in school. In school, they had Palestinian friends that were Christians like us and Muslims. But in the neighborhood, their friends they were Jews. My mom's friend was Ruti, and she still lives on the premises of my mother. And David Cantor was the friend of my father. David Cantor could not stay in Israel the way it is, or under the new formed state after the annexation of the West Bank and Jerusalem in 1967. Secular Jews, Jews with a worldly view, Jews that are really interested in peace and they see the injustice could not live here. He left to the States. As for the younger generation, they learn from their parents and from their grandparents. It is not, I don't think one can live without being part of a political system or a political aspiration. They've been beaten. My own two sons were beaten just this last Holy Saturday on their way going to the Holy Supper to pray. They were not in any political rally, and they just wanted to go to the Holy Sepulchre. And by the way, my sons looked very civilized because they are blonde with blue eyes, if I may add as a footnote. They were detained by for no reason at all. They decided, the Israeli soldiers, they did not want them to go down to the Holy Sepulchre, and they barricaded them with the iron metal barriers. They made like a small square and they put them there, and for no reason. Of course, with them living, it is not as if they are living the stories of other. No, this is their story. And this is the story of the young generation. What is interesting, if I want to move a bit to economics a little bit, I very much don't like the fact that Israel has given a lot of work permits to the Palestinians. Now, the Palestinians that go to Israel, they earn much more, triples at sometimes than the average salary in Palestine. And now they are content with the cash and with the disposable income, that sometimes I fear that they will forget about the political and social injustice and feel happy and content with the economic relaxation of things, if I may add. But in general, you can see what is happening in Jenin refugee camps. We have martyrs every day, and they are from the young generation. If you go to Lebanon and ask a person who's 18 years old, where are you from? He will not tell you, I'm from the refugee camp of Sabra or Shatilla or Baya. No, he will tell you, I'm from that village or from that city or from Acre or Haifa or here or there. So it is not, they are never from anywhere but their own cities in Palestine and their villages in Palestine.
Our friend Mary Claire wrote, I see in the biography posted in the chat that you have done work with the Catholic Relief Services. What motivated you to work for this agency?
Oh, first of all, it's nice to work in a place with a mission, to reach out, to rebuild, to empower. I was responsible for small projects, for entrepreneurial projects, and I worked a lot with women during the first Intifada, empowering those women, giving them a voice for the voiceless. When I wrote my progress reports, it was always with the background and the backdrop of the political situation that we were living in. That is from my duty to my country. And then it is nice to work in an organization that is service-oriented, because we are called to complete our faith. It is only completed through service. And now I serve with Sabeel, I serve with the DSPR, which is Department of Service to Palestinian Refugees, and I'm a commissioner with the Justice and Peace Commission.
Thank you. On a daily basis, more refugees are being created in Palestine as people become expelled from their lands or because of settlement buildings or demolitions. Is there any area where Palestinians that are still in their original family homes and not facing evictions or harassments?
Yes, of course, there are many. There are many villages in the West Bank that are fully intact. It is less so in Israel. From the many villages have been spared, and people live in their own villages and in their own homes, but the surrounding agricultural and other areas have been confiscated by Israel. So like take, for example, let's say Tarshiha comes to mind, or Me'alia. These are two villages up in the northern Galilee. The village is there, the village is intact, but the actual acreage of land has been confiscated after the creation of the State of Israel. But there are many people that are at home. Today, now, I don't think, personally speaking, I don't think I am under threat of losing my house where we live, Omar and I. I don't think anybody wants it or want to take it from us. We live in an area that is supposed to be serviced by the Jerusalem municipality, which is an Israeli municipality. We pay our municipality fees, but we absolutely we get no services, neither roads nor garbage collection, sewage, nothing. So that's it.
Yeah, it's most of the area actually gets now water only 3 hours or half a day per week. Yeah, there's a big issue with water crisis in the area where we live. I want to ask you another question. Somebody has asked, what is what part of the Bible that speaks the most to you?
رسالة يعقوب. إيش هاي رسالة يعقوب about service?
Letter of James, yes.
Letter of James. Sorry, I read my Bible in Arabic, so I have thanks to Omar who translates to me. So Letter of James speaks to me a lot. The Beatitudes are beautiful. They also speak to me. And I don't know how is it in English. When the Virgin Mary visited Elizabeth in Ain Karim, and it is, I don't know, we call it Nasheed al-Adra, the hymn of Mary, where she says, I don't know what
the
it is.
Magnificat, yes.
I have to Google it and translate it, but it is what Mary said when she was visiting Elizabeth in Ain Karim. They speak to me. Somebody said
the Magnificat, yes.
The Magnificat, yes. Sorry, I pray in Arabic, so that's why I don't know. Next time I'll be better prepared. I'll have a Bible in English next to me.
Many people ask us as Palestinians, how realistic is the right of return and solving the Palestinian refugee problem? Today, where our villages used to lie, there's towns, cities with hundreds of thousands of Israelis living on them. How do you respond personally?
I respond, as I said earlier, we should have the right to exercise. It is our right to exercise this right. If I choose to go back to live in my home in Talbiya, it is my right. If say, for example, my husband wants to go back to his village in Mjedel, the government has to give him part of the land, a significant part of the land, to start rebuilding. It is, but the solutions, the implementation can be discussed. Others do not want to come. Others, families have died. For example, I tell you something. What hits me to the core is the complete disappearance of whole families in Palestine, for example. And it is something that I really, truly regret. I always wanted to do it. Drive with my father in Talbiya, his neighborhood, for him to tell me those houses belong to whom. For example, I know that the Murqos family is no longer there. That's it. There are no descendants, neither here nor abroad. Many families in cities like Jaffa, I will name just a few, Mantura, Zamariya, Talamas, those names no longer exist. There's absolutely no descendants, even in this country. And when you tell them the right of the return or what happens to their property that has been left without any people to inherit them, I don't know. But is it our right? Is it our right to exercise this? Yes, it is. it has to be, first of all, I don't think any single Palestinian even thought or dared to think that far ahead. It is like a dream, or not the impossible dream, but a dream. But I think definitely refugees in Lebanon would come back. Refugees in Lebanon are not allowed to work outside their the boundaries of the refugee camp. Certain professions are not allowed for them, neither to study them even in the universities in Lebanon. Lawyers, engineers, doctors. We have a hospital that is run in Lebanon by the Palestinian Red Crescent, and it is there that they give the training for nurses, only to work in that hospital or in the refugee camp. Many are leaving, and they're opting to go to, I think, the Gulf countries. Jordan is the only country that gave citizenship to the Palestinian refugees, even those who live in the camps in الوحدات، ايش اسمها الزرقاء، in تبع جرى شو اسمه ناسية. They are the ones who have they are the only ones in the Arab world who have citizenships. The rest, they have documents that are issued by UNRWA, a refugee document, and it is with that they travel from one country to the other. They're not even a citizen of anywhere. So yes, those people will come. The refugees in Syria, I mean, they have suffered a lot. And the funniest part of it all, that Palestinian refugees in Lebanon and in Syria, in Jordan, are becoming host families to Syrian and Palestinian refugees coming out of Syria, because they know, I think they are the best psychologists and the best counselors for those newcomers, because they have been through it. It is amazing how many Palestinian refugees are becoming another time refugees from Syria, becoming refugees in Jordan, in Palestinian refugee camps, and in Lebanon in Palestinian refugee camps. So yes, they would want to come back, and it is the responsibility of leaders to have a plan of implementation that is feasible. I understand that Israel wouldn't want an influx of Palestinians in the state that was created in 1948, because that would change the demographics. And with the new national law that Israel is a Jewish country, that would really tip the scales.
If people have questions, we would encourage you to include them into the chat. Or you could also, if you'd like to share something, please do raise your hand and we will open the mic, since today our group is smaller. This September, from the 16th or the 18th, is the 40th anniversary of the Israeli-Lebanese rightist massacre of the refugee of Sabra and Shatella. We should highlight it. Yes, I mean, that is, Sabra and Shatella is one of the major, unfortunately, one of the major massacres that have happened. Yes,
I could arrange, sorry, please go ahead.
I might just say that one of our frequent viewers, Don Wagner, was there the day afterwards to see what the horrible conditions were. It might be good to get him on this, and I'm sure it's coming out in his new book, which will be out in a month. But Don was there at Sabra and Shatila right after the massacre on behalf of the Middle East Council of Churches. Don Wagner.
Yes,
thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dara. Sandra, you wanted to share something?
If we do plan something to commemorate Sabra and Shatila, I can help you get a few speakers from our DSPR office at JCC in Lebanon, in Beirut, Lebanon.
Yes, I hold something regarding Sabra and Shatella. We need to keep the memory alive of all of the victims. A question about does the collapse of the Israeli government provide any cause of hope?
No. Okay,
Sadly, yes.
let me be factual about things. I don't think hope has to come from more than one side. First of all, we all understand that Israel is the shaker and mover of things, but this does not mean that on our part as Palestinians and the Palestinian government that we should not have a better, we should not have a new impetus towards the peace process. I think the stalemate is killing us, is suffocating us, is more than anything else. So it takes much more than the collapse of the Israeli government. It takes action on our part as a Palestinian government, and mostly, and I say it with a very heavy heart, the international community should not stand idle anymore. I know that I've been asked if I get bored retelling my story and keeping it alive. I'm just afraid that the international community is bored with us. This is my fear.
Thank you, Sandra. Yes, Maria?
I just want to say that how much many of us appreciate you telling your story. I've heard so many stories, but this was a different one and so heartfelt. And I just really appreciate you sharing it with us. And many of us are trying to help in small ways. It never feels like enough. But I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you. And I appreciate you being here also. And no matter what little deed, your little deed with my little deed, with everybody's little deed, it becomes, I think, a cannonball in the rolling or a rock that rolls. So we have to keep it moving. Thank you very much.
Yes, Francis? Will you please unmute yourself?
Yes, I also want to express gratitude to you, Sandra. It has been wonderful to hear you. And also, I mean, I've heard other stories, but yours is your story, and it was really great to hear it, and I so appreciate your speaking to us. I live in Canada, and I've been to Israel only twice, but I do what I can to be in solidarity. One thing I do is do on the ground for 3 churches here every week, to try to keep up with what's going on. And anyway, I try to also to keep up with these Kumi now. And anyway, it was wonderful to hear you, and thank you so much. I so appreciate that.
You're welcome, and we are blessed to have friends like you all over the world. You are our voice too. It's not only us who have voices. We need your voices too, and thank you for that wholeheartedly.
Thank you, thank you.
So thank you everyone for joining us today.
في كمان سؤال واحدة بتسأل عن
okay, sorry. Yes, Martha. Sorry, I did not see. I thought that was the last question. Yes, Martha.
Yes, some have argued with me that UNRWA should not exist anymore, and that the refugees are, it's now descendants, and so descendants should not have the rights of being called refugees. And I'm wondering how you would respond to that.
They are not genuine peace seekers, those people who say those comments. If they really want peace and security for their own people, they really should consider those issues seriously. When my father passed away, when we put the obituary in the newspaper, usually we put Al-Quds, which is Jerusalem. In my father's case, we put At-Talbiyya, Al-Quds, which is the neighborhood from which he came, where he became a refugee. So it doesn't matter how many generations down the line, the problem will persist. And how many generations down the line, if things are not attended to in the proper way, there will be no actual peace. There will be this, on both sides, there will be this mistrust, there will be this anger, and there will be conflicts arising here and there. And if the Israelis feel that there are no refugees, maybe they should leave us on our own and not keep on those incursions in the West Bank, in Palestine, and into the refugee camps and here and there, and killing our youth and imprisoning countless others. If we do not exist and we are not refugees, then why do they come into our own country, or whatever remains of it, for that matter?
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you entirely. I didn't know how to respond to this person. And they were not very, they were not educated in what the situation is on the ground. So I'm wondering, how do I explain that this is an ongoing situation? It has not been resolved. So how do I educate this person in thinking in a different way, that these people still, they need resolution.
They need a resolution. I will tell you something. My daughter lives in Haifa now. She got married to somebody from Nazareth. Her husband is from Nazareth, and they are settled in Haifa. She has two sons, Luca and Mateo, and they hold the Israeli citizenship. And even I see from the interactions in Haifa that it is a segregated society, even in Israel. And you are expecting those people to make peace, true peace based on justice with us. It's very difficult. My daughter chose to put her children in an alternative school where they do not abide with the Israeli curriculum, and thus they do not take the subsidies that all schools are owed, because they chose to teach something different. And the curriculum, the Israeli curriculum, is a one-sided story. Those people, it's all I'm saying. We Palestinians often teach our children, we do teach our children to be inclusive and tolerant. And on the other hand, they don't do that. This is what my daughter and her husband teach their children, because they live in Israel. He's a doctor. He works in an Israeli hospital. His superiors are Israelis. I mean, he's an Israeli by document, but when I refer to them as Israeli, I don't know how to make the distinction. And they respect them, they accept them, but it is not vice versa. And when Luca comes, he is almost 6. he asked his mom, why when we come to Teta and Sido and we go to Ramallah for ice cream, we see a different flag than the one we see in Haifa. And she has to explain to it that there are two different countries. But he said, how can I be in a different country than my Teta and Sido? Teta and Sido are grandfather and grandmother, sorry. These are questions that need to be answered by them. But at this moment, it is up to us to educate our children of tolerance, of acceptance, of compassion, even though we are the victims, even we are the ones that have lost our homeland. It is our responsibility, and it is asked of us by our faith to be such. And this is how we teach our children. Thank you.
Randy?
Well, first, let me just say thank you to Sandra Khoury for her witness and what she has shared with us this morning. But second, I had put a question into the chat, which noted the fact that displacement of Palestinians continues to this day. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit about what happens to people in places like Masafer Yatta or other places where the land is confiscated and their homes are taken. I know that there's still active resistance to what's going on in the South Hebron area, but do these people have an option of still registering with UNRWA? Do they have another way of being able to adjust their lives if the worst situation, them being evicted and not being able to return, should happen? What about other places? There's so much land in the Bethlehem Governorate that is under threat right now, either from new settlements that pop up to the government seizing land for national parks, quote unquote, national parks. And I just wondered if the people who are currently living there have options with the international aid organizations, or if they will be forced to go internationally, and if so, on these flimsy papers, if they don't have a citizenship. What is their future?
Very bleak, if I might add. They will fight it like they did in Khan al-Ahmar, the settlement of Bedouins on the way going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. It is not the first time that they have thrown people out of the lands based on security reasons or confiscation of the land. It is a shame that our government is not able to protect us. And you have to understand that alone, as Palestinians, we cannot do anything. The church itself was unable to protect the land of Kremizan, which is a land owned by the convent in Beit Jala, in an area called Makhrur. They were those lands were confiscated even with the outcry of the church and the international community. It is sometimes, I don't know, now that you reminded me, now I'm a bit furious. Not furious, I'm just like, it feels that we are incapable of dealing with our own issues. We are unable to protect our own people, and our hands are tied. Nobody dares call Israel out. In my opinion, if they have the right support, they have to go to the International Court of Justice. This is our only recourse. This is only our recourse, because there have been a call in churches in the US, the United Methodist Church and the Lutheran Church, to call that this system is an apartheid, to say it outright and to accept it as a word that describes the regime in Israel. Human Rights Watch used it. But the international community and the international organizations and aid organizations are doing a lot. But I think going to court is our only recourse now. And I think we can win it because we have so many friends that are willing to say their share about these issues and to support us and to defend our rights. But how do things look? Very bleak the way they are now, sadly.
Very sad. I agree with you. Margaret?
I wanted to join very heartily as a Canadian living in Scotland to thank Sandra so much for her presentation today, and to assure you that the stories are being told. We listen to those that are coming from Palestine itself, and also the Palestinians in the diaspora, of which we have quite a few in Scotland, are also active in this way. I'm pleased to say that one of our universities, and in fact more than one, but St. Andrews has taken the lead in this way, has instituted a postgraduate scholarship, which you may know about, for students from Palestine to do a postgraduate master's course there, a very successful program. In the main, the graduates of that program have returned to Palestine and taken up important work in professions and other fields. Occasionally, some have stayed here, but are also vocal about the injustices in Palestine. And we also have an active branch of an international organization of Palestinian photographers, or photographers who have taken an interest in Palestine, with regular exhibitions and so on, and as well as filmmakers based here in Britain who are engaged in making films. One recently about the present day situation in the Shatila camp in Beirut. These are finding audiences, new, sometimes young audiences, eager to know more about the present day situation. So though we understand that it's very easy to feel downhearted, you must not do so, because in many parts of the world, as you've heard today, people are working hard, and the word is spreading. And certainly here in Scotland, Scotland's a small country, but it bears a tremendous responsibility for the situation that Palestinians found themselves in, as you know, through the Balfour Declaration. And we have a Balfour project here, which is seeking to change our government's mind in the United Kingdom government about protesting in the International Court. So wish us good fortune and pray for us in these activities, please.
I do so much, because we need all the soldiers we can get in this peaceful peaceful march, let's say. But thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Jan?
Thank you, Sandra, for your presentation today. I am a Canadian working in Canada in refugee resettlement for a Catholic diocese. And the Catholic and other church-based sponsorship agreement holders are one of the few ways that Palestinians can get refugee resettlement, because their UNRWA document is not considered to be a valid UNHCR refugee status document. I know that's very technical, and I have sponsored a Palestinian family from Gaza, but my conscience also bothered me, and I wanted to ask you, am I helping or harming the Palestinian cause by sponsoring refugees for resettlement from Palestine?
at least it's being done in a safe way, and they're not drowning on the rafts leaving Gaza or from any Mediterranean port. Let me start with this positive note. But I also have the same sentiment that when Israel gives Christians of Gaza permits to leave Gaza to come to Bethlehem during Christmas or Jerusalem during Easter. And I know that out of, I don't know, 10 permits, 9 will go back and 1 will remain. And the Christians are evaporating in Gaza. It's a double-edged sword, I tell you. It's exactly the same. It's like posing the question, us being educated and able to speak English or any other Western language, is it good or bad? It makes it much easier for us to resettle, to pack our bags and go. Our education allows for it. There's no right or wrong answer. All I can say, at least since they wanted to leave and they have left, it is the best way to have a dignified way of resettling and rebuilding instead of going through the hardships of rafts and the treacherous sea. It is up to us as Palestinians also to make Palestine as safe as possible, to open it up for more opportunities, to make less people wanting to leave. So don't feel guilty. Most of the work has to come from us as Palestinians too. And we try. My husband, he's the chief executive officer of a pharmaceutical company, and we employ in excess of 352 people, 58 people. We have an office in Gaza. We try to give equal opportunities to women. We try to be fair. We do those things. We try to do those things to have security, social security, economic securities. But life is very tough, and I cannot even start telling you of how expensive it is for us Jerusalemites to stay in Jerusalem. There is no land to build new homes. It is extremely expensive to buy a 100-meter house. There's now a new project that is it is owned by the Orthodox Patriarchate. To buy a house of 100 meters, you pay like 1,200,000 shekels. Let me see how much that is. I mean, I think we work and die. We live 7 lives like the cats, and we will never be able to pay that much money. The challenges are immense. People are immigrating even without being refugees. We are immigrating because we're living under occupation, and we don't feel safe, and there is no security, and it is simply too expensive to live here. 100. I need to find out how much in US dollars does it cost to buy 100,000. 3.4. So it is like $353,000. This is like a ridiculous amount of money for Palestinians. Most people opt to rent. Many of the young Christian families, instead of living in Jerusalem, they go and rent out in the vicinity of Jerusalem, like in Ramallah or in Bethlehem. And once the Israeli government finds out that they are not living in Jerusalem, they lose their temporary residential status of Jerusalem. So we lose our rights to medical care, we lose our rights to health, national insurance and disability payments, unemployment, the moment we leave Jerusalem. And if they find out, like rent in Jerusalem, if for a normal apartment, nothing big, is like $1,400, $1,300, while in Bethlehem or in Ramallah you can get something twice as big and you pay $400 to $500. So don't feel bad for giving a better opportunity to people. Hopefully they will not forget Palestine. Hopefully they will be able to give back to the organization that you work in. And I think Palestinians should learn to give back, not only take from the generosity of others. Sorry, I took so long to answer your question.
No, thank you very much, Sandra. I want to thank you for the time. We're over an hour. So thank you everyone who has been with us today. And thank you, Sandra, for sharing your story. It is very appreciated.
Thank you very much for your participation. And I have to give a special thank to Omar, because really he's not the small engine, the big engine of that organization, and for that excellent program. And hopefully we will continue to see each other and meet each other, and maybe here in our office in Jerusalem.
Inshallah, as we say. Next week, we're covering the topic of Israel as a nuclear weapon, as a country that holds nuclear weapons. So it's a fun topic. It's illegal to be discussing it. So we're gonna enjoy talking about it, like always. Thank you all for being our committed friends. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your solidarity. See you next week, and please encourage others to come and join us in breaking the law next week as we talk about Israel as a nuclear power. Take care, our friends, and see you soon, inshallah.